Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
S1 Racing Series is back again for round 4 of the season. We come to you from the land of peaches and one of the best and most storied sports car racing circuits in America. Welcome to Road Atlanta and welcome to Apex Racing TV's coverage of the S1 Racing GT3 Sprint Series. My name's Ron Mullins, joined by my partner in crime Taylor Stolworthy here in the commentary booth, with Joshua Wilkie working all the cameras in the virtual production hauler. Now Taylor, I'll pass this off to you real quick. We've seen dominance really from Gregory Hovison, who's won all 3 races this season, but the man who's gone close to him in the past 2 has been Kyle Domark. He's finished runner-up to his teammate in the past 2 races. They're both run Mercedes, and he got very close last time out in Bathurst. So do you think he might stand a chance and finally put up the fight to Gregory Hovison?
You know, that's a very good question, Ron. It's going to be a tough fight as Hovison currently has pole in qualifying as we wrap up those final few minutes where drivers are trying to set their fastest lap times. I'm going to have a more pessimistic take here. I don't think this would be the race we see Domark oust Hovison. But I also don't think it's an impossibility that Hovison makes a mistake or someone takes a chance or is just slightly faster, because the gap between first and second isn't super far, which means this could be a more exciting race today.
Well, I think at a track like this, which is so tight and technical and there's so many chances to make a mistake, I think this race is going to be really exciting. You have a lot of opportunities to make a mistake, that being one of them coming through the final corner, which if you make a mistake going through there, you are done for, because you're going to have a very hard collision with one of those walls. But there's many parts of this track where we can see mistakes. We saw it in the Petit Le Mans race a few weeks ago. We saw, I think, 11 cautions, or I think 11 or 12, I'm not sure the exact number of cautions that we had in that race, but we saw a lot of drivers, the professional drivers, making mistakes in real life. So you can imagine in the sim, even though we have a 45-minute race ahead of us, I think a lot of these drivers are going to make mistakes, so we might have a more jumbled up grid, but I think we're still going to have some good racing throughout, because you have plenty of overtaking opportunities. This is definitely one of them, going into turn 6, and then following it up right after that is turn 7, which is probably going to be the most important corner for all of these drivers, regardless of whether they're in qualifying or in the race proper. Because if you get a bad run coming out of turn 7, you're going to be done for this massive back straightaway, which was actually used to land planes many moons ago, back when the Whittington brothers owned it, shipping illegal substances into the country, but we don't want to touch on that too much. But this back straightaway is very long, and it leads to the heaviest braking zone on the track. So turn 7 is going to be very important, and I think with the chaos that we saw in real life, I think that will translate to the sim.
Yeah, and I certainly think as you're talking about mistakes and trying to keep the car in control, keep an eye on those Ferraris. Throughout the season, we've seen a couple mistakes from the drivers as the Ferrari is fast, but can be tough to handle, especially at a technical track like this. Raidsma is currently the best performing Ferrari in 4th, followed by Olsen, Luther, Bellata, Italiotis, Grizzle, and Pearson. And we're taking a look at Raidsma, see if the Canadian can do well. 3/10 behind Hovesen. But one thing I'm really excited about, Ron, look at that gap from 2nd all the way down to 15th. Only 6/10 separate them.
It is a very close fight. We saw a fantastic fight 2 weeks ago at Bathurst where we saw a last lap crash, but saw some fantastic fighting all throughout that race for the final few podium spots, and certainly infighting throughout the top 10 that we've seen throughout all of this season. So that will be something we have to keep our eye on. But right now the driver's running up towards the front, obviously Hovesen. Right now pulling away right now, the only driver to dip below the 118 barrier. So he is definitely staking his claim in this qualifying session right now with barely any time left. I believe we're about to take the checkered flag soon. Yes, we have. 15 minutes has passed in this qualifying session, and there's Hovesen in the Lamborghini, which is something that we haven't seen. Usually he's been in that Mercedes, but he's racing in the Lamborghini tonight, so that'll be an interesting challenge for him. But the other two drivers that are joining him at the front of this field right now, Bellinger and Justin Dive Bomber Barrera, are names that we have seen up towards the front. They finished on the podium this season, and they're currently the top 3 in the championship. So the top 3 in the championship staking their claim on the top 3 in qualifying as these drivers round off the session.
Yeah, I'm going to be excited to see how that Lamborghini does. The first driver, I think, this year to actually use one. And it's also Hovesen, who's been the fastest on the grid, so that should be exciting to see. My eye will also be on Olivier Bellinger, who's qualified 2nd today, being the only driver, apart from Hovesen, to get under 118.2. His last lap wasn't able to improve, only a 118.23, but some pretty solid and consistent pace throughout qualifying means he could have a shot at trying to take Hovesen down. A lot easier said than done, though. Raidsma, I think he was on one final lap, doesn't improve. Actually, no, he did. He jumps to 2nd.
Ooh, that is a barnstormer of a lap just at the final moments there for Raidsma. He jumps to P2 and breaks up. That definitely a disappointing result for Bellinger while he's still qualified 3rd. But I think he's going to try and stake his claim on this championship fight. Right now he has 35 points. He is 35 points behind Gregory Hovesen right now in the championship. And with so few rounds left, I mean, we're halfway through the season. We only have 3 races left to go here. If Gregory Hovesen can have a good result and possibly take another win tonight, his 4th of the season, he'll definitely put one hand on that championship trophy. He can't lock it up tonight, but he can definitely stake his claim on that championship. So I'm sure Olivier Bellinger is a little bit upset that he got bumped off the front row at the very last moment there by Raidsma, but I'm sure he's going to definitely try and look to have a very good race tonight. He's been a consistent contender in this series, and qualifying has wrapped up, and the drivers are going to be lining up on the grid shortly. And I believe we'll get the starting grid here, and it's Gregory Hovesen taking the pole position here. The Delta Sport driver has put on a clinic once again in this series. It's an all-Canadian front row as Spencer Raidsma joins him starting in P2. That's Olivier Bellinger and Justin Barrera rounding out your 2nd row. Then we have Kyle Domark, who we thought was going to be a contender for Hovesen. He qualifies in a somewhat disappointing 5th. And that's Jesse Olsen in 6th, Justin Hall in 7th, Bradley Alvis, who I believe both of those two had coming together 2 weeks ago in Bathurst. That will be something to keep our eye on. And then we have Jake Luther and Ryan Scowney rounding out your top 10. And looking through the rest of the field, it's Belota in 11th, Adalotis in P12. Then looking through the rest of the field of this very stacked field that we have in this series, it's Gristle in P13, Matthew Pern in P14, Simon Atwell, the series founder, looking to have another clean race after the nice race he had at Bathurst. He lines up in P15. That's Cassano in 16th, Elder in 17th, DeHinza in 18th, Buscal in P19, and Shane Brown, I believe, rounding out your field about 3.5 seconds off of the pace. Not sure what happened there. He is definitely the slowest by a wide margin. So maybe just didn't get a clean qualifying lap, which at a track as time technical as this, I think mistakes are going to be very important and something we're going to see a lot of throughout tonight's race. I'll pass that off to you, Taylor. Do you think we're going to see a lot of mistakes from these drivers tonight, or no?
It depends. I mean, we saw some mistakes at Bathurst, but that's to be expected. I think they can keep it cleaner today, but I think I'm certainly going to be excited watching no matter what. They've had clean races, they've had a little bit of races where there's some contact. I'd expect a mix where maybe not as aggressive as last week, but expect a couple spins and a little bit of chaos. And also talking about Shane Brown, who is starting by the rear of the field for Swift Racing. He needs to shake off this qualifying, and I was going to do a Taylor Swift pun, and I completely fumbled the pun as we get underway with the formation lap.
Well, I have short memory loss, so I can relate to having a moment like that there, Taylor. So I think I'll give you some time to think of that pun again as I take the viewers through the rest of the schedule that we have here for the S1 Series, which is a very good schedule. We've had some great American road circuits like Sebring to kick the year off. Then we went to Road America only a few weeks after that, and then we went to Mount Panorama, the Australian GT circuit, which is one of the best in the world as far as I'm concerned. And now we're at, in my opinion, one of the best circuits in all of America, Road Atlanta. It's a fantastic circuit. It's played host to many amazing moments, and many of them that we've seen in Petit Le Mans over the past few years. Certainly that crash between the two DPI, actually no, it's not DPI, it's GTP, if I can get the correct year there. We've seen some great moments throughout Petit Le Mans history. We saw some great moments here back when the SCCA runoffs were held here every year, and this track always lent itself to some fantastic racing. I'm sure it'll carry over here again tonight. And then we also have some two fantastic circuits to round the schedule off. We have the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit in 2 weeks' time, so stay tuned on November the 8th for that race. And then to round the season off at Watkins Glen on November 22nd, that will be a fantastic race there. Watkins Glen, another glorious American circuit. So I think I'll ask this briefly of you here, Taylor. Of the two races that we have left, which one are you looking forward to the most?
It's got to be Watkins Glen for me. It's a track I grew up with in a lot of the racing video games and stuff I did. And back last summer, I was able to visit the 6 hours at Watkins Glen for that race, which was a lot of fun. It was a cool experience, and it's such a beautiful track. I'll be very excited when the season wraps up in upstate New York.
I also have a feeling that that'll lend itself to some very strategic racing, because strategy is a big factor, because these drivers have to make a pit stop at some point during this race. The pace car is slowly pulling away. They're going through the turn 10 chicane. It's going to be Gregory Hovesen maintaining that position as he usually has at the front of these fields. He is going to be the first to take the green flag. He goes very early right before he gets to the final corner. He pulls away quite well there. Gregory Hovesen gets a fantastic start, and a lot more of the drivers go side by side farther down the field. They start to even out a little bit as they go into turn 1, but we still see some more side-by-side action farther in the back, and there's contact there. There's a driver spinning off. I believe that might have been Retsma there that went off there going through turn 1. That's a very tough break for him. He put in a fantastic qualifying performance to line up on tonight's grid in P2. That was probably his best qualifying result of the season, I believe. So unfortunately for him, I'm not sure what happened there. Maybe there was contact, or maybe it's just the case that we've seen of the Ferrari being out of control, and we see it again as he goes into turn 5, a spin there. And sadly for him, that'll wreak havoc to his race. The number 009 car having another spin there. He is having an awful start to this evening's race.
If I recall, last week he had an incident. Well, 2 weeks ago, back at Bathurst, he had an incident, and now it's gone horribly wrong. He's to the very rear of the field in 19th. Christopher Cusano didn't make the grid, so Reitzma's not in 20th, but now Hovesen under a little bit of pressure out in front. Bellinger was able to regain second place after losing it at the very end of qualifying. Here comes Dibon Barrera diving late through that corner to challenge, and now he's got a little bit of room on the outside. I'm not sure if he'll have enough momentum heading into this next corner right here, right on his bumper. May get a little chance with some slipstream. Hovesen, a very comfortable lead at the end of lap 1, but nose to tail from 2nd to 6th as they continue for lap 2. No move from Barrera this time on Bellinger, but it has gone great for Bellinger and Barrera. It has gone all wrong for Retsma, and Hovesen, business as usual.
I thought we were going to see a bump and run there coming through the final corner. They were so incredibly close. That was just a beautiful racing that we've seen all throughout the S1 series. So anyone watching at home, if you're surprised about how good this racing is, don't be surprised, because that's just a hallmark of this series. It's been so close, and these drivers treat each other with so much respect. But just because they respect each other doesn't mean they're going to race each other as hard as they absolutely can. And you can just see from the back there of Bellinger's car, his championship rival right now. These two are only separated by, I believe, about 6, actually no, I believe it's I gotta bring up my championship standings here. I believe it's about 3 points separating these drivers, so they are incredibly close in this championship. So they're really the championship battle that we have to keep our eyes on, with Gregory Hoverson so far ahead, not only in this race but also in the championship fight as well. So these drivers are going to be very, very racy against each other. I'm sure these two are going to be breaking their elbows out. I'm sure Justin Dive Bomber Barrera is going to go for some dive bombs, but I'm sure Olivier Bellinger is going to be, as he usually is in the series, he's going to be cool, collected, and he's going to try and bring it home, and hopefully he'll bring it home in the podium.
I think as we get to this later stage of the season where push comes to shove, expect the nice driving to get a little more rough as you start to see the fight for second, third, fourth, and further down the standings. If Hoverson has a bad race, you could even see a fight for the title, but right now Hoverson with a very solid start, a lot of the action being this fight for P2. Dive Bomberera looking up high. Is he going to try to switch down low into this corner? I don't think he's making a move just yet, but he is staying right next to Bellinger, not giving him any room to breathe as we see some shuffling further down the field. Purin, Dinza, Atral's falling back. Reitzma has actually done better than Buscal, who's in the pits with an issue, it looks like. But we're still nose to tail, second, third, and fourth down this long straight. It's going to create this little slipstream chain that's going to make it very hard to pull away from, but there may be an opportunity if you're risky on the brakes. They're not going to take the risks this early. It's only 4 minutes out of the 45, but it is going to lead to a very exciting start. We're going to cut to a quick replay of one of the earlier incidents as we take a look back. This is Simon Atral. We've seen a lot of action up front. We see some action in the rear. Atral, oh, he just gets it wrong and into the tires. Oh, that is not a good wreck for the series founder. And by the way, he also streams these races too, so if you go back in his stream, you can get a onboard replay with his live reaction. But that is heartbreaking for Atral, who had some very bad luck at the start of the season, and it looks like that may have put him out of the race tonight.
Yeah, that is such a shame. He started the season off in the Ferrari, ran the first 2 races, then switched to the Mercedes at Bathurst and has run 2 races in there, and unfortunately he had some good fortune in Bathurst, and sadly for him, he has had some very bad fortune here at Road Atlanta, but that's a corner you expect to see some mistakes on. We saw it earlier there, for Rennsport, he had a few spins coming through there, and we just saw Atral go off there as well. We've seen plenty of mistakes there, regardless of what series we're running at, whether it's in real life with the Petit Le Mans, whether it's with the Radical Racing Challenge here on Apex Racing TV, whether it's here with the S1 series, or whether it's with another GT series that was here on Apex but a few months ago. The ARL GT3 trophy, we saw plenty of drivers hit the wall coming through there, so we've seen major mistakes there, and of course that corner so fast with such little room to run or hide. That's a corner where if you make a small little mistake, you're done for. So we've seen plenty of drivers make mistakes so far. We saw the spins from Rennsport very early on. He's currently running far back down in the field. He's currently running in P16, possibly looking for a move here on Brown, and he does there. Brown really gets out of his way there. But we've seen plenty of drivers make mistakes very early on. It's something we expected to an extent, but there's definitely a lot more chaos than we saw 2 weeks ago at Bathurst.
Certainly. Here's Rennsport as well. He's a man on a mission. He had that early incident, but already back in P15, his last lap was a 1:18.83. He's faster than pretty much all the drivers up to P10. Only Jake Luther was slightly faster, but over the course of the race, I wouldn't be surprised if Rennsport starts to get back into a potential top 10 fight. Has a long way to go, and that podium chance probably has disappeared from his grasp, but already a good recovery to already get back into the fight. But a lot of action. Reitzma trying to catch up, but here is Luther, who's kind of hanging out on his own. He can see the train ahead of him, but struggling to catch up. This is where the train is unfortunate, where you aren't in it and you want to be in it because you don't have a slipstream partner to help you on those long straights.
And the biggest thing with that slipstream effect too is the fuel saving measures, which is really important in the series. We've seen the undercuts and the overcuts play a big role when it comes time for the pit stops in these races. So right now Jake Luther is getting none of that assistance whatsoever. Bellotta up ahead is about 2 seconds ahead, nearly 2.5 seconds ahead. So he's really just in no man's land at this stage, so he's not getting the slipstream from anyone at this stage. Really, the only things that are near him at this point are particles of dust, a little bit of tire rubber, and maybe a pigeon hanging by the side of the track. So right now, Jake Luther is really in a race of his own right now. Maybe he'll try and catch up to this battle. Certainly with how close these drivers are, they'll probably start to fight each other very heavily. So we might see him catch up a little bit. We've seen that throughout this season where these drivers get so caught up in the battle that a 2-car battle can then turn into a 3, 4, even a 5-car battle. So we've seen some great train action throughout this series. But we've also seen a lot of drivers make mistakes. I believe Elder made some kind of mistake as he's just dropped back to last right now. He's about 31 seconds back of the leader right now, but never mind that. We have a battle here between Gristle and Scowney here going into the turn 10 chicane. They're going side by side, and now they're slowly catching up to Alvis up ahead. Alvis was going very slow on the brakes, but is now starting to pull away. I think the reason why he caught up so much was he went so deep at being Grizzle, went so deep on the brakes going into the turn 10 chicane that he actually cost himself a little bit of time here. And now I think Scowney is looking for a move here going into turn 1. It just does not have the pace to get the move done there in turn 1, but I'm sure Scowney is feeling a little bit impatient at this stage, even though there's so much left to play for in this race. We're only 8 minutes, about 8.5 minutes now into this 45-minute race, but these drivers are already starting to get really racy.
Yeah, certainly, Ron. It looks like Scowney's got the faster car. He's had some good opportunities, and after that miss into turn 1, he's going to need a little bit of time to catch back up. During the move, we saw them go side by side. He tried to pull a switchback, dropping in late into the corner, but Grizzle was able to hold on to the position, even though he fell for it, going a little too deep. But as we continue with 8 minutes gone, Grizzle is holding on, still at the very tail end of the slipstream train that goes all the way down to P10th. Bellata on the very end of it. Luther is a few seconds back, but more action in the front or the middle of the pack could see him start to get those slipstream effects, and they are a little bit behind the top 3, who are their own sort of train. Hoveson a 2-second gap over Bellinger and the rest. Hoveson setting another fast lap time. Bellinger actually matching it, but he's still comfortably in the lead for now. But a lot less comfortable are these drivers that are holding on to their positions or looking to move up the field. Justin Hall trying to catch up to Domark, who hasn't been as fast as he's usually been. As we had talked about before the race, it had been Hoveson Domark 1-2 comfortably for those final previous 2 races. But this time around, Domark is in the middle of that podium fight. And he's looking on the outside, trying to look inside, and also looking in his mirror as Justin Hall begins to close up.
I think Hull is probably Domark's worst enemy at this stage of the race. I'm sure Domark is looking at the 2 drivers of Bellinger and Barrera ahead, just trying to just push everything that he can to try and get closer to that pack. But right now he's really just falling into the clutches of Hull right now. Hull had a bad exit there coming out of turn 7. You can see he's not really catching up with the slipstream effect, especially the dirty air coming off of that Mercedes. It's not a very aerodynamic car. It punches a big hole in the air, but despite that, Hull barely gained any time. I think he might have lost time there on Domark just because of how bad of an exit he had coming out of turn 7. It's such a very important corner at this track. I'm sure it'll play a big role in this massive pack that we have here that's kind of deteriorated. You can see these drivers are starting to space each other out right now, but still a nice train that we have here, certainly closer than most racing that we have on the worldwide stage. But we got some side-by-side action here with Gristle and Scowney. We saw this battle a few moments ago, and they're continuing to battle here, coming through the first series of corners. That's a very tight battle between those 2. And as those 2 continue to battle, Bellata is slowly closing in, and right behind them, you can see him just barely at the back of the shot as they went through the S's there. You've got Luther way farther behind. You might be seeing these 3 start to battle, and you might smell blood in the water here. Scowney is looking for a move around the outside going into turn 6. That's going to be very close there, but I think he gets the move done. They're still going to be side by side. That's going to compromise both of their exits. Scowney actually gets a pretty decent exit there, but Gristle got a really bad exit. He had to keep it tight to the inside curb, and I think that'll cost him dearly as he might get overtaken here by Bellata. And maybe if Luther focused so much on getting a good exit there, he might be able to overtake him too. Luther's closed up so much. We mentioned it a few moments ago, just how nice the battling can be, how hard the battling can be, and it will eventually just drag other people into that fight. So we saw this 2-car battle, now it's a 3-car battle, and I think if these drivers start to battle even harder, it might become a 4-car battle here soon.
It very well may. Meanwhile, Rennsport up to P13. Now it's 4 seconds to catch up to Piran, but he has been lapping 1 second faster than him and will have a little bit more clean air to deal with. However, Italiadis may not fancy himself out of the fight just yet. He is right behind him, will get some slipstream, but not enough for a realistic move entering turn 1, starting the brand new lap. But Skalny finally, as we just saw a few moments ago, able to beat Grizzle. One thing I've noticed, Skalny's got some very strong top speed down the straights. That's been something that he's been able to utilize at the start of this race. And he did so by able to pull away after making that move on Grizzle. So it makes me wondering, maybe that top speed is something that the BMWs have and could help Barrera as he tries to catch up to Bellinger. The gap is now 1 second between the duo.
And that straight line speed is definitely important in this section of the track coming out of turn 7 and going down that very long back straightaway. But for the rest of this track, I feel like having a very straight line dependent car is not the best thing in the world. This is a fixed setup series, but these drivers still have to nickel and claw for everything they can. So having a car that is really good in a straight line but also really bad in the corners may be the reason why some of these drivers are just yo-yoing through the field. They'll go down, then they'll go back up, then they'll go down, they'll go back up. You see a lot of fluctuation in the pace, but that's just a nice little feature of GT3 racing where you have that sort of yin and yang effect, you can call it, between the different cars. You have certain cars, I mean, it's not racing here in the series, but the McLaren is probably the fastest GT3 car in a straight line. We saw that in the ARL GT3 trophy earlier here on Apex, where the McLaren was just so much faster than everyone in a straight line that he could really just dominate the field at those very straight line dependent circuits. But when it came time for some technical circuits, he started to struggle, that driver. So it's a nice little hallmark of GT3 racing. And you mentioned there how the BMW might be very fast in a straight line. That will play a big role at a track like Road America, but at a track here like Road Atlanta, where you have that very tight and twisty section in most of the circuits, that'll be a bit of a hindrance.
Yeah, you can see Hall getting to 160 down the long straight into this slow section. Wasn't able to close up that much, so the pace difference not as large as it had been between the Ferrari and BMW earlier. But this battle is certainly exciting to watch. Domark still under pressure as Olsen is even trying to get a little bit closer. He's only a second back to Hall, and if these two start to battle, Olsen will get even more of that help from the slipstream. He was only 1,000th of a second behind Hall on the very last lap. And as we continue, 15 minutes, about a third of the race gone. Within about 5-10 minutes, we'll be seeing the pit stops. And Ron, what do you think is going to be better? Do you think the over or undercut is going to be the go-to strategy for today?
Well, I was just going to ask that question about what drivers might be setting themselves up the best, and I think we might see some drivers attempt to do the overcut here. I think one of the drivers that will try and do the overcut will definitely be Justin Hall right now. He's been sitting in the slipstream of Domark, and even though that BMW is pretty quick in a straight line, I think if you listen very closely, he's probably lifting ever so slightly towards the end of this straightaway, just trying to tuck in behind. He can definitely understand the slipstream effects and trying to just get even an extra lap out of that car. We see how honed that is with these cars, especially with how chaotic the outlaps can be with these very squirrely GT3 cars. I'm more of an open wheel guy, so I definitely know the pain of coming out of the pits and being all kinds of messed up with your car. So I think Justin Hall might be setting himself up well for the overcut, but to answer your question, I think the overcut will probably be the winning strategy for tonight.
Certainly the overcut will be something that Hovesen has to be careful of, because you're under pressure from second and third with any over-undercut strategies while he's still comfortably in the lead. His lap times haven't been blistering, but we've seen Hovesen turn up the heat whenever the pressure starts to build. He's been consistent around the 118s. 118.6 was his lap last time around. He has the fastest overall lap of the race, 118.19. That's a pretty comfortable 2/10 margin over Barrera and Bellinger. We're still fighting for P2. Barrera has closed up the gap ever so slightly for second, only 0.8 back now. But yeah, further down the field, the only other fast lap in that category, Rennsport, who's now moved up to 12th. He had a 118.375, tying the second fastest lap, held by Barrera. But yeah, Bellinger and Barrera still the final two on the podium at the moment. Domark Hall further down the road. But these two, not battling just yet, but they're close enough where one mistake from Bellinger would bring them within a pretty exciting battling distance. Dive Bombrera, a full 10th faster that time around.
I'd like to mention one thing as we're seeing the replay here via the pass for Reitzma. I was just about to mention that, how Reitzma has put together a good race. He is showing a lot of pace as he did in qualifying. Right now, as you said, tied for the second best lap time so far as he gets that move done fairly uncontestedly going into turn 6. But I'll ask you this here, Taylor. I think Reitzma might have a very good chance of getting a good result out of this, even though he's farther back in the field right now. As you see him on the left-hand side of your screen, he's about, it's a little under 10 seconds between him and the Luther, between P11 and P12. But we still have those pit stops to contend with, and we're still not even at the halfway mark of this race. So I'll ask you this, how far do you think Reitzma can actually claw his way up this field?
It's definitely going to be tough. It's going to be relying on a good pit strategy and how much damage he may have to repair. But should he get back out without too much time lost, I think he could challenge for P7 in Alvis by the end of the race, not including any drivers who wreck. So I think he could be knocking on the door to P7 right in that middle of that 7, 8, 9 train. Actually, it goes down to 10 and 11 as well by the end of the race. But it's going to still take a lot of effort and a lot of solid laps. Things here he is currently doing very well. And by the way, Luther's into the pit lane. I'm not sure if that is a disconnect. Nope, it is. He's actually pitting, and he will be the first driver making a scheduled pit stop. Atchel and Buskell had damaged pit stops earlier. The latter, Atchel, I think, had to tow, and he's still a lap down because of it. But he is the first official pit stop of the race. He's going for the undercut, and this will give us a good sort of a baseline time for how much time you lose in the pits, and that's going to be important for that lead pack. They don't want to get caught in that group of Italiotis and Piran, because if they get away on that hot lap, that could be a huge difference maker in terms of whether an overcut or undercut strategy works. So a lot of action as Luther now exiting the pits. 16 seconds in the box, 43 on pit lane. He's back down in 15th, 6 seconds away from Dinza, who is the first car he'd find, who also is, of course, naturally due for a pit stop coming up soon. Robert Elder, who's further down the field, also elects to make his first pit stop of the race. Well, only pit stop at this stage, but electing to follow that similar undercut strategy. He is a lap down as he exits.
And this is a very interesting strategy. Maybe it's just me. I mean, I'm not the brightest bulb on the block. You, Taylor, and our producer, Josh, probably know that because you've heard me talk a lot. That I'm not the brightest bulb on the block, but that seems fairly early to me. I'm not really sure how this strategy will work out for those two drivers. Certainly, they were at the back of the pack, so they really didn't have all too much to lose. Certainly, in Elder's case, he didn't have a lot to lose because he was running farther down the field. But with Jake Luther, he was really in no man's land, so I think he's just trying to risk it and just try and do something different than the rest of the field. So I think that might be the reason why they pitted. But touching on a point that we mentioned quite a few moments ago with Reitzma, how we were talking about how far he might be able to claw up the field. We do have an incident point limit in this series. I believe it's 20 incident points until you pick up some kind of penalty. So for Reitzma, who had a very dramatic start to the race, he might be at risk of possibly gaining some incident points. One driver who gained some incident points, I believe, is Kyle Domark, who we're going to get a replay to see what on earth happened to him. He might have had an off here. We're following him coming through the very tight and twisty section going into turn 5. We've seen drivers make mistakes here before, and he goes wide. Whoa, just barely misses that tire barrier. That could have been disaster for Kyle Domark. It's still not a very good situation as he loses a bit of time and picks up the incident points there, but still Kyle Domark just barely keeps it out of the barriers.
Yeah, that was a huge save by Domark, and it's allowed Hall to get a little closer, but the gap is a little further. This gap remains extremely close. Herrera has been absolutely aggressive these recent few laps. I have a feeling he's probably gunning for an undercut with that aggressive strategy, closing all the way up to Bellinger in these last couple of laps. He's got a good exit here as Bellinger was struggling a little bit. I think Herrera may be looking to the inside. I don't think he's going to go for it this time, but he was nose to tail right on his bumper, saying hello as they went down that straight, and they head into this next section of the track. He is still oh so close. Bellinger may also need to pit early. He is noticeably slower, whether he's trying to defend or maybe whether it's just something else is getting in the way. We'll have to see. but he has fallen off the pace considerably, and Hovesen hasn't been that much faster. Barrera is definitely licking his chops, looking for a potential move. He's going to hold up for now into this slow section. Brown, one of the other drivers who is at risk of getting lapped, is going to pit this time around. I'll have to see if any of the lead drivers are going to go in. It doesn't look like it at the moment. Shane Brown, who is hoping to shake it off with Swift Racing after a tough qualifying session, will get an undercut opportunity. Hovesen sets a flyer. 1:18.1, that's the fastest lap of the race.
That's a slick pun. I like that. So, yeah, that's a very competitive lap there from Gregory Hovesen. He might be doing the same strategy as Barrera. And we've seen this from him in the past. We've seen him really turn up the wick, and he could just see him throwing that Lamborghini through turn 5. He has to have some guts to do that. He doesn't do any practice laps. He hasn't set a practice lap throughout the series, but then he goes into the qualifying session. He sets a greaser in qualifying, then he goes into the race, and he usually dominates. And he's doing that right now. So I think Gregory Hovesen is definitely pushing that car. And Justin Dive Bomber Barrera is as well. He was about, looking at my live timing screen, he was a little less than a tenth of a second faster than Olivier Bellinger last lap, and he was about 2/10 quicker than him the lap prior. So I think Bellinger is definitely trying to conserve his stuff right now. Meanwhile, Bellinger is just trying to use up his stuff. He might be eyeing up a pit stop here in the not too distant future. We're over halfway into this race now. We're 23.5 minutes in here, and none of those drivers decide to come into the pits yet, but I think maybe in about definitely within the next 3 laps, we'll see these drivers come in, as we see a lot of drivers coming into the pits. Saw some shuffling farther down the field with drivers that were a lap down, but these drivers are definitely starting to push their stuff even more. We're take a look at the last laps they set, and actually Barrera was a little bit slower than Olivier Bellinger last time around. Meanwhile, Hovesen was still going very quick, set a 1:18.3, so it wasn't usurping his previous lap time, but Gregory Hovesen is still definitely the man to beat right now. He is pushing his car to the absolute limit, trying to extend that gap, so we'll have to see what these drivers try and do strategy-wise.
Yeah, certainly everybody's favorite television program, Under Pressure. And by the way, Under Pressure, Justin Hall, he has had an absolutely horrific corner, falling with Olsen, making a big overtake. We were saying that he could get into the fight if Domark and Hall started to battle, and that indeed has happened. Olsen now up into P5, Hall down to P6. Right as we changed to the camera, we saw the overtake happen, and a little more shuffling here in the middle of the pack as we get set for pit stops. But that was a good move by Olsen, and now he's going to have his side sets on Domark to try to make it 2 moves in a short span. That'll be a lot easier said than done, and Hall is staying pretty close to him, only about 2/10 back. A good slipstream run could bring him right back into that fight. 25 minutes gone. That last lap, Olsen was 1:18.8. Hall definitely had an issue there, 1:19.6. So I think it was the error that just opened the door for Olsen.
That was a good move there from Olsen, and that was also a good move from our producer Josh, who cut to that camera at just the best time so we could see that pass going into turn 6, which is a section that's not really the best in the world for battling, because you really have to get the move done going into 6 with authority, because if you're still going side by side going through turn 7, you'll basically be dragging each other down like you're carrying an anchor. So that's a very tough corner to try and make a move turn 7. It's a very tricky section to try and battle, but we saw that happen there, and those drivers just battled very hard, and it was clean, and he got the move done. So I'm not sure what happened there with Hall, as you said. Much slower there. Must have been a mistake there, considering how slow he was in that small little section between turns 5 and 6. He must have made a mistake coming through turn 5, which wouldn't be the first time that we've seen that in this race. But meanwhile that's going on, we see some drivers pitting farther back in the field. I see DeHinza pulling into the pit, so I think we might see some drivers going in. Yeah, I see DeHinza there on the blocks right now. He is pulling in. Bellinger is pulled in as well. You can see he is pulled in from that podium position, and you can see Domark, Olsen, and Hall have also pulled in as well. So a lot of these drivers filing into the pits at this stage. I'm sure in the not too distant future, Justin Dive Bomber Barrera and Gregory Hovesen are definitely going to have to respond very soon.
Yeah, this is definitely the lap that Hovesen and Barrera, their eyes will widen and they crank it to 10. They need to set an absolute flyer this time around, and they'll probably be in within a lap or 2. Pretty much everyone else in the field is pit. Alvis notably staying out. He now inherits P3. Bellinger exits the pits with his pit stop just about completed. 16 in the box, 43 on pit lane in total. But yeah, everyone else from Domark, Olsen, Hall, Retsma, Skalny, Bellata, Grizzle, Italianis, and Piran also pitted. Domark, Olsen, Hall lead the group out of the pits, and Skalny is also going to be leading Bellata and Grizzle. Or actually Luther, I think Luther is actually overtaken both Bellata and Grizzle out of the pit stops right there. I don't think he had the position before, but that is certainly interesting to see. A lot of them that close. Luther was 43 seconds. That's the fastest total pit lane time with a 16:02 pit stop. And now here comes Barrera and Hovesen. Now the eye will be on how far Bellinger, or how close, sorry, Bellinger can get as Hovesen makes it into the pits. He was a 1:22 entering the box. Of course, a little slower on that lap time, as you do have to slow up before entering the pits, but this will be a crucial part of the race to see whether Bellinger can get back in the lead. All of us will actually follow, but he won't be able to hold on to the lead after his pit stop. How long was Hovesen's stop in the box? We're waiting to see. It is 15:58. That's the fastest pit stop today. Barrera even faster, 14:23. That extra lap probably allowed him to get a little less fuel. And coming out of the pits, Barrera is going to hold on with a somewhat comfortable gap, but notably cold tires gives a little opportunity for Bellinger to get back into the fight.
He's also going to have a pretty big gap there to Bellinger, so right now about 5 seconds separating these drivers, and Justin Barrera in the middle of those two. So Barrera just got the short end of the stick there for the fuel. He was able to take a lot less fuel, as we saw Mercedes going off there. I'm not sure who that was. I believe that might have been Brown going off there. Coming through turn 5, you can see the very visible marks there in the gravel trap. So not sure what happened there. Just a quick little mistake. I think we might get a replay here soon to see what happened there with Brown. I think, yeah, just going through, you can already see some damage on the front end of that Mercedes. And yeah, I believe he's right ahead of Barrera. So good. Oh boy, that might have been just a simple little mistake there. Some possibly very creative interpretations of the blue flag rules there. So Brown has a mistake there coming through turn 5, and I believe it's actually towed back to the pit. So he will be done for tonight's race. He's already 2 laps down. It will definitely be out of contention, but good for him on getting out of the way and not really holding up Dive Bomb Barrera too much. But right now that gap has definitely decreased between Bellinger and Barrera. Bellinger, of course, had the advantage of pitting a lap earlier and having some warmer tires exiting the pit lane. So I think Barrera definitely lost some time on that lap, so we'll have to see what the battle is between these drivers, as Hovesen is continuing putting on some pretty good lap times right now, continuing to pull away from Barrera.
Yeah, I think that Brown move is certainly one to say, hey, I'm getting out of the way. I do not want to hold you up, because this is a very easy section to hold someone up at, especially as Barrera was right on his tail entering that little slow set of corners. But now they're going to be all back to full speed. We'll see how their lap times are going to be doing. But look, this is the total pit lane time for all the drivers. Barrera, 2 seconds faster than Bellinger, a second faster than Hovesen, although he is a bit far away from Hovesen, and that'll be very hard for him to get back into the fight. Olsen now down the inside of Hall. Hall had regained the position briefly, but Olsen is looking to get it back. Side by side down the long straight. It's going to be a battle of the late breaks heading into this corner. Who will be the last one to enter, and who will be the first one to exit? They're staying side by side through the braking. Olsen maybe looking for a switchback as Hall went a little bit deeper. He is right on his nose, but there is no room for the move at the moment. Now looking to the outside. That way is still closed. Will he get a little slipstream and a nice run out of this corner? It looks like he's gaining, but it's probably not enough, and he backs away to fight another day. But Hall barely holding on. This is turning into a very exciting fight for P5, and they are all alone. Back behind them is Alvis, and he is 5 seconds away, and that is a pretty safe margin for the time being.
I was going to say that the idea of saving fuel might be at most of these drivers' minds, keyword being most. I believe the reason why Barrera had a much quicker pit stop than everyone else is probably because he took less fuel, and he might have to do some fuel saving in the late stages of this race, so we might see that play in effect here. But as we're seeing some close battling there, it looked like Olsen was going to try and sneak the move there going into turn 6. That probably would have ended in calamity for both of those drivers, but Olsen is definitely feeling really racy at this stage right now. now. All the gloves are off. These drivers are breaking their elbows out, beating and banging. They're doing they're doing everything that they can to try and get past these drivers. So I think Olsen is feeling really racy, might try and find any way he can to get past Hall. This will be a fantastic battle that we have to keep our eyes on from now till the checkered flag.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of time to fight, and these two, they're going to have a more active battle. You mentioned Barrera, and I'm really glad you did, because he is going to have to manage that lower amount of fuel. He did get the extra lap on the overcut, but if he runs low close to the race, that gap is going to start to go away, and as he tries to save fuel, Bellinger can get ever so closer. Current look at the lap times of the leaders: Hovesen 18:34, Barrera 18:27, Bellinger 18:34. They're all about pretty equidistant, 2.5 and 2.2 seconds separating that top three, who have certainly been in a league of their own tonight at Road Atlanta, and it remains that way. But Bellinger on a mission to reclaim P2. And he's going to be looking for some other strong lap times, but naturally that warm tire advantage has started to burn away, as Barrera and Hovesen are also back to their full racing speeds.
And right now, the thing that we and the viewers have to keep in mind is that these drivers are not only battling for second place, they're also battling for second place in the championship. So that'll add even more pressure on those drivers as they continue to battle. We're seeing some more battling here with Olsen. We saw a big lift there. I could hear it there as they went into the turn 10 chicane. That was a massive lift there from Olsen. I think he's just trying to save up his stuff. I think he's maybe doing a little bit of mind games right now. That's really a big component of motorsports, regardless of what league you're running in. Mind games will always play a massive role. So I think Olsen is just trying to stay prominent in Hall's rear view mirrors right now and just try and just do a little bit of mental warfare. But I think Olsen definitely has a pace advantage. You can see he's not really giving it 10/10ths right now. I can hear that engine of that Ferrari, and it's not at full song. That's not an engine issue. He is just really cruising at this point, so I think he's just trying to save up his stuff and save it for end of the race assault. We're about to hit the final 10 minutes of this race. We're 26 laps in, 34 minutes in, and we're about to see these drivers start to break off and start to battle even harder than they did at the start.
Yeah, certainly this stage of the race, I mean, you have 45 minutes, you think, oh, that's a pretty comfortable amount of time, and all of a sudden, it's minute 34, and you're starting to count down the amount of laps you have left. We're seeing only about maybe 8 to 9 to go for all of these guys, and when you think about how many serious overtaking opportunities you have, we're starting to get to the single digits for those passing opportunities. So if you're Olsen, you need to be ready to lick the envelope and send it sooner rather than later. And the question will be, will he have enough stuff to stay into that fight? He goes pretty deep into that final corner that time, but keeps it on the racing line and the racing surface. Domark has had finally a bit of extra room to breathe. He's comfortably in P4, also very far out from that podium battle, but also I don't think he minds at the moment. He's very content with this P4 finish and knows there still could be a little bit of chaos left to go up front. Notably further down the field, even a larger battle. Alvis, Scani, Luther, Bellotta, Grizzle, and Reitsma all within 6 seconds of each other. And Reitsma, he's approaching that pack. I guessed earlier that he'd be looking to maybe fight for that P7 position, and it certainly won't be impossible in those final 10 minutes. Maybe a little improbable at this stage. But one thing you can bet is that Grizzle is going to see his Ferrari in that rear view mirror momentarily.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think Grizzle is going to see Reitsma in his rearview mirror right now, and I think he's definitely going to see him in front of his windshield very soon. We saw Grizzle have a big slide there coming out of turn 7. Reitsma is going to tuck into the slipstream of the fellow Ferrari up ahead, as Hovesen has set another fastest lap. He might break into the 117s by the end of this race, but never mind that. We're seeing this battle between Grizzle and Reitsma there. Reitsma has the inside going into the turn 10 chicane. He gets it done, but it's not over yet. I think Grizzle might try and look for a move. Ooh, it looked like he was going to try and go for the switchback there as they went through the turn 10 chicane, but Reitsma stakes hold to that claim and moves up into P11. He has a pretty large gap to close if he wants to break into the top 10. Certainly not insurmountable, but it's definitely going to be a big challenge if he wants to close that nearly 4-second gap in the final 9-ish minutes of this race. So that'll definitely be a challenge, but until he can He needs to worry about a lot more before he can worry about getting the move done to make into the top 10, because right now he has Grizzle, who's probably looking for some kind of retribution to get past him soon. But speaking of some great racing that we've seen, this is some very close stuff that we've seen pretty much all of the second stint so far. Olsen is continuing to hold off Hall. Well, actually, my apologies. Hall is starting to hold off Olsen. I blame my dyslexia for that bit there. But I think Olsen right now is getting a lot more impatient. We saw him, he was lifting at this stage of the straightaway but a few laps ago, and you can see he's closing that gap massively as they go onto the brakes. So I think Olsen right now is starting to feel really racy. I think we might see a move here from Olsen in the not too distant future. And as you mentioned there, the few overtaking opportunities that there are on this Road Atlanta circuit, the overtaking opportunities that these drivers have to make a move have reached the single digits at this stage. So I think Olsen will definitely try and size up where and when he'll make this move.
Yeah, and certainly what Olsen's going to want to see is a moment of weakness to strike. But Rennsport had a moment of weakness not too long ago. He actually fell back behind Grizzle on the previous lap. I'm not sure whether it was an error by him. Maybe he left the window a little too wide open for Grizzle to send it. We're actually going to take a quick look at how Grizzle regained the position. Rennsport has been pushing it to the absolute limit to try to get back into this fight. This is the initial move that Rennsport was able to get. As we take a look at it again, he's going to need to do that one more time. He's going to need a Control-C, copy, and paste to get back into that position. This is where Grizzle is going to capitalize off. It's probably going to be a little air here from Rennsport. Oh, it's that same corner going a little bit wide, keeping it out of the grass. He has to concede the position. That is really bad news for Rennsport. That's good news for Grizzle, as he still remains so locked into that fight. The pressure is still there, and now they are side by side as we get back to the action in the present. Going down into the turn, Rennsport will be on the outside of that first corner. Grizzle on the inside. Rennsport, oh, a little bit of netcode contact, and Grizzle goes around. Rennsport keeps it straight. And the good news for Grizzle, at least, is he is back very quickly and able to continue. The question is if he had any damage on that incident. He has a very safe gap to Italianis. He's not going to fall to P13. But I think that was some netcode there, Ron.
Oh, that was netcode for sure. We're going to get a replay to see what happened, but it was probably about 2 feet separating those cars there. We're going to see what happened. There was some netcode contact earlier because you could see Rennsport's car jolt as they went through the first part of that chicane, and yet again, going through the second part of it there, Grizzle has some big snaps there trying to get his car back up to speed, but that's just tough. It's so unfortunate because that battle was shaping up to be so well and so awesome to watch in these final few laps, but just sadly, it's just some outdated coding here on iRacing that has ended so many battles, and unfortunately, another one bites the dust there.
Hopefully netcode won't get in the way for some of these fights that are going to be happening. Maybe not between these lapped cars, and that's actually going to be a little hurdle for Hovesen to clear as he closes up to them, because it's interesting to see Elder and Dinza in a pretty heated battle for 15th. All of a sudden, the lead pack is getting ever so closer, and they are not going to share the same enthusiasm as that fight for P15 for the others. We'll look at them. They're just getting out of the way. But watch what Dinza will do. He is going to be following Hovesen as close as he can, because he knows the most vulnerable moment for the guy in front of him, Elder, is going to be when he pulls away to give Hovesen the position. This is where some of the mind games for lapped drivers actually get into the mindset. So this is one of the things you like when you're at the bottom of the field, when the leaders come through and you maybe can find a moment of weakness for someone having to obey the blue flags. Piran still doing well, but he is 20 seconds away from being lapped as well. Not any serious danger of it at the moment. Waiting to see when we're going to see this BMW pull out of the way. There he goes that time, and oh, he's going to get turned by Hovesen because he didn't get out of the way in time. And I'll say, I think Hovesen has every right to kind of demand for him to move because, well, you know, you do have to obey the blue flag rules. You do have to let the leaders go, and that is going to be disaster for Elder. The chances for P15 have gone up in smoke, and that is good news for Dinza, who now gains the position. Let's take a look at the replay one more time. He only opens up with a little bit of space here, and Hovesen, who had to, I think, deviate from the normal racing line, went into him trying to stay going the right direction. So yeah, that is definitely an interesting an interesting incident right there.
Oh yeah, that was inevitable. Honestly, I think Elder should have yielded to Hoverson going through turn 6. Should have yielded to him coming through turn 7 for sure. Definitely going down this back straightaway, but he stayed ahead and then paid for it dearly going through turn 11. So yeah, the old online phrase, the more you F around, the more you're going to find out. And sadly for Elder, he found out there. And unfortunately for Hoverson, he must have picked up some kind of damage there, as you can see that gap between him and Barrera has cratered. You can see that this is the closest that we've seen for this lead pack fight, especially towards the end of these races. Barrera is within a second of Hoverson. I think Hoverson is not only frustrated based off what happened just a few moments ago, but I think he also picked up some kind of damage. That wasn't very good contact there. That wasn't a very good corner there for Barrera, who had a massive snap coming through turn 1. He's lucky to keep that car going in a straight line, but I think Hoverson must have picked up some kind of damage, which won't affect him too badly, I believe, going through this very tight and twisty section towards most of this track. But on that very long back straightaway, that will play a massive role in that car just slowing down, so that could be the reason why that gap has cratered. It's a little north of a second now, but I think we'll see that gap slowly tumble down as they go down this back straightaway. We'll just keep a nice eye on the left-hand side of our screen to see that gap between those two. We've got a lapped car involved there. I believe that's had Lotus there that's involved in that. The lapped car involved with that. Actually, is that? I believe, actually, no, that's Pascal there in the Porsche. My apologies there. So they're kind of acting as a little bit of a pick there, but still that gap closed up quite significantly going down that back straightaway. I don't think there's enough time for Barrera to close up that gap to Hoverson, but I think if this race was probably about an hour long, I think Hoverson would be in real trouble.
Yeah, there certainly would, and we are getting down to crunch time. About a minute to win it. We'll be seeing the white flag soon, and I'll say, I actually kind of disagree with one of the statements that the damage won't affect Hoverson that much. I actually think that has allowed Barrera to get close enough to really pose a threat, although that last lap time sees Hoverson back to relative normal. What is good normal as well, as the white flag waves now, is this battle right here. Looking down on the inside, Luther trying to get by Skalny. It isn't open as they begin their final time around here at Road America. So I think Hoverson may have just held on barely for the lead, but that lead isn't the safest. This pack is also very unsafe as the fight continues, as now Luther has fallen a little further away and is now being pressured by Bellotta. So from fighting from P8 to now trying to hold on to P9. Oh, Hall's gotten a little bit loose as well. Olsen and Hall going back and forth. A lot of action up there, a lot of action back here as Skalny went off the track. He's not going to be able to challenge Alvis, I believe. But wow, that was certainly an interesting incident, and they are still fighting as they head into this next section of the track. Things have spaced out ever so slightly, but I think as we look further up the field, the Olsen and Hall incident is going to need a replay look as we missed it. Barrera in second. Hoverson makes it 3 in a row since race number 1. And also Bellinger is going to round out the podium places. A good fight from Barrera. If he had a few more laps, he may have been able to seriously challenge as Olsen and Hall hold on for P4 and P5. Oh, sorry, Domark and Olsen, P4, Olsen and Hall, P5, Alvis, Skalny, Luther, Bellotta round out the top 10. And wow, sort of an anticlimactic, but also a very climactic finish, Ron.
Oh, that was certainly a very climactic finish. We saw some battling farther down the field, and I think if that race was extended probably by about 5 minutes, we might have seen some more battling there between Hoverson and Barrera. You can see that gap by the end of it was only 0.7 of a second between those two drivers, which, considering how they were about 3 seconds only a few laps prior, just shows you how badly that damage was affecting him. It was like he was dragging a parachute down the back straightaway, so that could be the reason why Hoverson was very slow, but still, that was just tough luck there that he got involved in that incident, and that nearly cost him dearly. But we're going to get a replay to see the nice battle that we saw between Hall and Olsen there. This was a place where it flared up on multiple occasions throughout this race. Going into turn 6, Olsen is looking for the move around the outside and gets the move done. Nearly made contact between those two going through turn 6, and they make contact definitely going through turn 7 as Hall went for the dive there on Olsen. That was some great racing that we're finally getting a replay of. That was great to see. But just more great racing from this series. We've seen it all throughout this year. Some strategic racing, some hard racing, and we definitely saw a lot of that tonight.
Yeah, for sure. That was a really exciting finish. Olsen and Hall have been fighting the entire night. Of course, there was going to be a little bit of contact on that final run. Olsen barely wins out for P5, and Hovesen, despite the lap car incident and a little bit of damage, has that first hand secured on the title. Oh, so close, and I have a feeling he'll probably be able to clinch it next week. But hey, anything can certainly happen. He's going to burn it down. But yeah, another fun one, this time at Road Atlanta, and as we head back to Germany next week, it's going to be even more fun.
I believe if I do some quick math here on stream, he definitely won't be able to lock up the championship tonight, but he has to leave with only a 35-point gap, and he entered tonight's race with a 35-point gap, so I think Gregory Hovesen has a really good shot. Really just basically needs to start next time out in 2 weeks' time at the Nürburgring to claim this S1 Series championship here for Season 2. But that was another great drive for him, but nearly ended in tears with that incident he had with the lap car of Elder. That could have played a massive role into this race. It definitely did towards the end, but it could have been even worse if things went even worse for him. So we might get the other results here soon of a very dramatic race here from the S1 Series here at Road Atlanta. And it was Gregory Hovesen taking another win, his 4th win of the season. He is on his way to a clean sweep. I think some of these drivers might try and stop that clean sweep in the final 2 races of the season. We'll just have to wait and see, and you'll just have to wait and see here on Apex Racing TV to see if Gregory Hovesen can go 6 for 6 this season. That would be a fantastic storyline. So then we have Justin Dive Bomber Barrera in P2. Just barely less than a second between those two drivers at the checkered flag. That's Olivier Bellinger rounding off your podium. In P3, Kyle Domark, who finished runner-up in the past 2 races, finishes in P4, very far back of the podium, but he still put together a good race. And then it's Jesse Olsen with that fantastic move on Justin Hall. He finishes in 5th, while Hall finishes in 6th. There's Bradley Elvis, who had a fairly quiet race, all things considered. We didn't see too much of him. He finishes in 7th. That's Skalny in 8th. Luther in 9th, put together a good race. Balota in 10th, and then Retzma just barely missing out on that top 10 spot. He finishes in P11. That's Grizzle, who made contact with Retzman many moments ago. He finishes in 12th, quite a few seconds behind him. That's Adelotis in P13, Matthew Perrin in P14, DeHinza in 15th. Admiral with a very tough race. He finishes in 16th after having an incident early on. Pascal finishes 2 laps down in P17. That's Shane Brown, Robert Elder, who had incidents throughout this race. They had very tough nights. And that's Cassano rounding out your field, who did not take the start.
Yeah, definitely the same up top, business as usual, apart from that incident with Hovesen. But yeah, exciting action all across the field. And I think looking ahead to these final races in Nürburgring and Watkins Glen, it's going to be less looking at the gap of Hovesen, the 35 he needs to hold on to for the win, but rather whether Barrera, Domark, Olsen, Hall, Bellinger, maybe even with a miracle, Simon Attrell could slip into 2nd and 3rd overall in the standings. And they have not disappointed with any of the action we've seen all season.
And right now, going into this race, a gap between Olivier Bellinger and Justin Barrera was only 3 points. So that battle is going to continue to heat up as they swap positions. So it's going to be a very close championship fight farther behind. Obviously, Gregory Hovesen, who's just been so... He's been dominant throughout this season. You can say it. It's really... There's no other word to describe it. He's been just... picking faces in and taking names throughout this season. So Gregory Hovesen is probably going to hold on to that championship fight. He held on to that car as you saw him go wide coming through turn 12. But I think Hovesen will definitely be the one to watch to win that championship. Really, I don't think anyone can contend with him, but the battle to watch will be farther behind, definitely between Bellinger and Justin Barrera. That'll be a close championship fight to watch. We'll have to give you the championship standings, run through those before next race here for the S1 series in 2 weeks time at the Nürburgring. That'll be one to go through and really to watch for the final 2 races.
Yeah, and I think we've said it a lot this year. If any of the races are like the ones previously, then we are in for an absolutely fantastic time in the next 2 and 4 weeks.
Oh, definitely. This is going to be, I mean, it's been so exciting this season. We've had great racing, we've had strategic racing, and we've also had a lot of drivers being and banging with each other. It's been a nice balance of everything, and I hope the viewers have enjoyed it at home as much as me. Taylor, I can't really speak on your behalf, but I'm sure you've enjoyed the racing just as much as I have. I can't speak on our producer Josh's behalf, but I think he's enjoyed the racing too, and I hope you, the viewers, enjoy it at home as well. You know where to find us here on Apex Racing TV. Same time, same channel, to join us for the Nürburgring race in a few weeks' time. That'll be on November the 8th. That'll be a good race to watch. And if you want to see some other racing action here on Apex Racing TV, we've got the Radical Racing Challenge at Brands Hatch. That'll be on Friday. Then we've got the ARL Prototype Championship. That'll be a good race also on Friday. And I believe we might have the late Apex. I haven't checked with our head honcho here at Apex, Lee Thompson. I haven't asked him whether the late Apex will return, but if you want some more sim racing insight, you know where to come here on Apex Racing TV. We've got plenty of racing action. We've got plenty of entertainment here on Apex, so if you want to see some more of that, you know how to hit the subscribe button if you've used YouTube for about 5 minutes. So I think I've run my mouth for long enough. I got a root canal on Monday and my jaw is starting to hurt a little bit, so I think that'll round it off here from the S1 Racing GT3 Sprint Series here, Season 2. We're in the second half of the season, but still just as action-packed as it usually is. So for myself, Ron Mullins, Taylor Stolworthy joining me in the commentary booth, and Joshua Wilkie working all the cameras in the virtual production hauler, I say thank you all so very much for joining us, and we hope to see you in 2 weeks' time. Have a great rest of your night.
Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.